In today's video, we're going to be having a go at making a Dog Man cake. So for this one, I have drawn myself out some templates of the front and the side view because I'm going to need that to help me carve the cake. And I'm going to need to create like a little base so the card is off the floor. So almost like a little cardboard table. Just make sure you're using like a food safe card. This is a cake card that I am using. And then once I've done that, I'm going to be using some modeling paste because it's hard to just put under the wheels. Now I want to try and do this without using fondant and modeling paste, but for the underneath bit, we're still going to use that. I'll try and keep what I can on the top of the card to just ganache. So I've cut some circles. I cut them to slightly shorter than kind of half. The idea was to get 4 to the same size. Didn't quite work. These are a little bit untidy. We're pushing these on under our card. Don't worry, we're going to cover these over later, so don't worry that they're not too neat and tidy just yet. So for the cake, I've got a Genoese sponge cake here. It is partially frozen because it makes it a little bit easier for me to cut and work with. Lots of you guys ask me for the recipe for these ones. Those that watch regularly will know I often buy them ready-made, so I'll put links below, but I do buy them from a company called Sweet Success. So I've got a card even the same size as the base that we've made. So I'm just going to cut around this for the bottom section of our car. So it needs to be the same depth as my template. It's not quite deep enough, but I think if we cut this in half, we could put quite a bit of chocolate buttercream in there and that will fill it. You'll notice when I cut the car later in the video, I didn't get the chocolate filling in evenly in all the levels. Like I put it in quite thick in the bottom layer. I'm going to stick it to the card with more chocolate buttercream as well. And yeah, you can really see that I should have spent longer kind of getting the layers level. I mean, it's only for me, so it doesn't really matter too much. This is one that my niece requested. She has been watching all the trailers for the Dog Man movie and she's very excited about it. So she really wanted me to make a cake of Dog Man. Although I chose the car rather than Dog Man, but I think that's okay. So you can see we've got some smaller squares on the top that I am just carving slightly to shape. So it doesn't need a huge amount of shape. And then we're gonna just cover the whole thing in ganache. Now I'm using white chocolate ganache rather than dark chocolate ganache for this one. Usually I would use dark chocolate, but I'm aiming to not put fondant on. Usually I put fondant on all my cakes, but I know not everyone likes it. Okay, it's not very neat so far. That's fine. We will neaten that up with a second coat and scraping over it. But I completely lose track of what I'm telling you, don't I? Because I start talking about other things. The white chocolate ganache instead of dark chocolate is just so that I can paint over easier with there not being any fondant going on. I'm going to paint it. And you can see me using the pictures from the trailer in there for reference as I'm doing this. So I'm just using this little tool, which I actually don't know what it's called, but I will find it and link it below the video to kind of scrape back bits of ganache. So the ganache is firmed up at this point. It's really cold in here, so it actually only took about an hour to firm up. Just neatening it again with my dresser. Now, without using fondant, I'm finding the smaller details a little bit trickier to do, like the grill. So I kind of put it on and then let it dry a bit before I go back to that. So windows in, tire bits marked in. Oh, so these kind of wheel arches, I thought they'd be fine to pipe on in ganache. It didn't work overly neat for me, but you know, I'll just take that off and start again, I think. This time without a nozzle. Oh, and my ganache this time it just partially set. So now it's all bumpy. So we're going to go again. I think that this is where if I had used like fondant, this would be easier. But I decided that I would almost treat it as if it was like modeling chocolate, even though it's not. I'm kind of sculpt it a little bit with my fingers, just with some gloves on. You can see it's getting very messy at this point. It's just neatening up those arches underneath with a circle cutter. And when it has kind of partially set, I can cut into it and get slightly sharper lines. Let's get the little police lights on the top. Just out of interest, actually, I keep calling it like a police car. I know when I've been putting it on social media, I've been saying police car, but actually is it a cop car instead of a police car? I think police car is more a UK term, isn't it, for things? Okay, so you can see it took me a while to shape things. You can see that it's a little bit untidy on the top. That's because I didn't let the ganache set quite enough. The grill bit, again, I was finding it difficult to go in with small enough details, but let's paint it and hope this is going to change what it looks like. So I can use powder colors, which I would mix with like a rejuvenator spirit or a clear alcohol. But when it dries, they're going to be powdery again. So if I touch the cake, it's going to kind of end up on my fingers. The alternative is to mix the powders with some cocoa butter. Again, I'll put links below the video, guys. We have to melt the cocoa butter though to do that. But that will paint on nicely and it won't smudge then when it's done. Alternatively, I've also got these, so these are the Karen Portoleo, kind of like oil paints, but they're not oil paints, they're actually food ones. They're just meant to act like an oil paint. So that's another option for me. I think some of the colours in this would be quite good to use, but obviously I could just mix my own. It's not an advert for any of these products, by the way, guys. I just wanted to try and kind of inform you a bit more of the things that I do use when I am decorating, because I know I don't always show you in detail everything that I use. So yeah, that's those. They, again, do have to be mixed with something. This stuff here, the diluter, and this is like a fast drying one and a slow drying one. I don't know if you can mix them with just like clear alcohol like you can the powders. I'm not sure. I'm presuming it's the same kind of thing. But yeah, let's have a go with these. Okay, let's start with the sort of oil ones, which, remember, are edible ones. Don't just go using any oil paints. They're quite thick, so you have to dilute them down. And then we're going to just use the brush. I'm going to paint into like sort of the inside or the underneath of those wheel arches. And anywhere really that's going to be a little bit dark and shadowed. I should have probably gone for a smaller brush. And let's see what colour this blue looks like. So I am getting brush lines. I think it's because I really maybe should have put a layer of white on, so that gave me a more solid colour underneath before putting the blue on. Okay, let's also have a go with the cocoa butter. It comes in a hard block, so I've had to kind of scrape it with a knife to get it into smaller little pieces. You put it above boiling water so it melts that cocoa butter, and then you just mix in the powder colours. It doesn't look totally dissimilar to the other one, so I've added a bit of white into it, and then I'm just gradually gonna kind of darken it. The only thing is, it is so cold in here, the cocoa butter is setting in my brush bristles and on the thing as I'm painting. So you can see it's leaving quite strong sort of lines or like bits of paint that are sticking up as I'm painting. So I should have really painted a full, like, not scene, but what's inside the car in there. But that was going to make my life too difficult. So we're just gone with the blue windows there. Can you see how it's clogging up on my brush a bit? I think it's because it's so cold in here. So cold. You can see I'm not overly neat with this. At this stage of painting it, I wasn't overly happy, and I'm just using my finger to just smudge bits. For anybody that comments saying that's really gross for anyone eating the cake, this literally is just going to myself and my family members. And I have washed my hands. But yeah, okay. So I'm trying to darken some areas here. Again, still not happy with it at this point. I feel like I could probably smooth down the surface. Now, I was thinking it's because I haven't quite got the ganache smooth enough on the underneath layer, but actually, I think it's the paint up's obviously giving it texture as well. If any of you guys have painted on ganache before, let me know what you would use to paint on with, and if you have a similar experience to what I've had, or if it was nice and smooth for you guys. Okay, so sorry, I'm rambling away about painting. Tires. We're still going to add extra bits of tire. I am going to go back to using modeling paste. I did try putting one on in ganache. I didn't think it was overly neat, so we've decided on modeling paste ones as well. Putting a bit of a dip in the middle. I just want to check that fits in there, because we're going to have like some silver hubcaps to put in there later. You can see I've accidentally got some white bits of cocoa butter paint on there. Just press it on firmly. I will need to tidy up like the underneath where you can see the white ganache a bit later on as well. Okay, so some grey for the hubcaps. So I'm going to roll it thin first, and we're going to cut out some circles. They don't want to be too thick, these. One for each tire. I've just pressed it in the middle, again, just to kind of stretch it out a bit, and also to make a dip so we can add a little ball of the grey in there too. And I am going to make wing mirrors. Now, why I decided to use a circle cutter for these, I honestly don't know, because I squished them into more of a rectangle. Now, I do have to push a little hole in with a cocktail stick. So these are the little ones that you put into food. And then we're going to push it in so that the point is sticking out here, so that we can push that into the cake later. Now, I think these will be fine to put into the cake because they are a food item, but they are probably going to have to kind of dry a little bit or firm up a bit before I push them in place. Okay, and this next bit that we're creating are the headlights. So two kind of ovals rather than completely round. At least I think that's what they're like looking at the trailer. And then we're going to paint in like some kind of light detail. And then I'm going to try and add some darker areas. So this pen is an edible pen, guys. Again, I know a video I did the other day, somebody was like, oh, she's put felt pens in the eyes of the cake. They are edible pens. So you can see we've come away from just using ganache now, because I am adding the headlights just in fondant. You can use modeling paste or fondant. Mine is fondant. Can't remember if I told you it was modeling paste or fondant, but it was fondant, the grey bits. Okay, I'm going to use an edible pen to just go around giving a bit more detail that I'm hoping is slightly neater than when I was painting. And you know who does paint really well in cocoa butter paints? Emma Hankins. She is so neat with it. and does lots of gorgeous florals. I did actually go for a one-to-one with her many years ago, and she's absolutely fantastic with them. I obviously have not got the hang of it yet. Maybe next time it'd be neater. Okay, so number plate. This is a small piece of fondant rolled nice and thin. We're going to go for roughly a rectangle. We'll remove the corners. Again, I'm just using the edible pens. I could have used the paints for this as well. I just felt like the pens were going to be a little bit quicker and less messy for me. And I did try to kind of copy the style of writing that's on the number plate. Mine doesn't look quite the same because I didn't space it out very well. So I'm just sticking it to the front with a little bit of water on the back. And then we need to add the windscreen wipers. So these are just some black bits of fondant rolled out. Again, I think if I was going to do it in ganache, I could have piped it on, but it was just getting to be so tricky. And it was taking a lot longer than I was expecting it to take to kind of shape everything in ganache. Again, if you guys have got any hints and tips for kind of shaping things with ganache, feel free to comment and let me know below. So I haven't made a car cake in a while, so a bit of a change for me with this one. I was originally going to try and do a 3D Dog Man, and then I thought, well, I don't think you guys have seen me do a car cake. I don't think. I'd have to look through my other YouTube videos for that to see, but we're just adding highlights in white, just where we want things to look a little bit lighter. This is actually the powder color that just mixed with a bit of Rejuvenator Spirit that I'm putting on here now. And then the little cop car logo bit that goes on the side. Swapped back to the cocoa butter paints. You see, throughout this video, I kept swapping from like the edible pens and all the different types of edible paints because I just couldn't make up my mind with which one was going to be easiest to use. Are any of you guys going to see Dog Man at the cinema? Let me know in the comments below. Like I say, my niece cannot wait to go see it, so I might see if she wants to go with me. Good excuse for me to go. Okay, so now onto Dog Man himself. So he's going to be a topper. Now I'm going to make him so that really we only focus on the front. I was going to do him fully 3D, but I decided originally that this was going to be a live. So I actually went online and did this live, not on my YouTube channel, but on TikTok and my Facebook page. And it's easy to film it from the top down so that you can see it nice and easily when I'm doing a live, which meant he kind of ended up a little bit flattened on the back of his head. So yeah, we're keeping him so that he only ever faces in one direction on this cake. But just shaping in modeling paste. So I'm just using the Saracino modeling paste for this, guys. Now I'm pulling out sort of the back of the head, little bits of fur, because he kind of has like a fuzzy texture on the trailer even. I can't speak today. So when I flip it the other way around, hopefully you can kind of see that around the edge. And it's just kind of teardrops squished down and bent a little bit for the ears. Again, more of that texture, and then turn it around. I'm going to try to stick these onto the back of the head. Just pressing it fairly firmly, otherwise they will just drop off. It will also need a bit of setting time. So I've put a little hole in the face where the nose is going to set into, and then a little thin line of black for the mouth. Now I'm using modeling paste because it's easier than fondant. It sets a bit harder, and because he still wants to stand up, if I do it in fondant, he might not be firm enough. And of course, if you do want to use fondant for this, you can do, but you would add some CMC or Tylose to your fondant so that it sets a little bit harder. So we're going to take a thin piece of black modeling paste for the rim of the cap. And we're just going to kind of bend this to shape so it just fits on that forehead area. And you can use a circle cutter if you prefer for this. I just decided I was going to do it freehand because I was too lazy to go get my circle cutter. Then we want some blue for the body. So you can see I've got a bit of sort of 3D-ness to it from the side, but it is still flat at the back is mine. I'm putting two little indentations in from the bottom. That's so that his legs can kind of slot into it a little bit. Made it longer than it needs to be so his head can overlap on there. If I were doing it again, I probably wouldn't do it this way. I would probably run cocktail stick or sort of kebab skewer through the body into the head to hold it together because he doesn't have a very strong neck joint the way I've done it here. Okay, so onto the arms, we're going to roll the blue. So it's thin at one end and a little bit thicker at the other. So thicker at the sleeve end. It's not his arm, is it? Obviously, I can completely tell what I'm doing when I watch it back. I made the arms in a similar way though. So that was actually his hat. And then we're going to add some shading and also some highlights. So I'm using the powders just like we did before. I'm using them wet. I really can't speak today. Wet on the edge of his kind of hat and his nose, but everywhere else I've kind of brushed it on dry, which gives you kind of more of a kind of blurry, I'm not sure how to describe it. Words do not come to me sometimes. a smoother, kind of blurrier, lighter finish to it when it's dry. Okay, so a little ball of like the same color of his face for his hands. Has anybody read the Dog Man books, actually? I've seen them, but I've never read one. Okay, so we've pushed the fingers in, and then I'm going to press that to the side of his body. Then we can add the arm that I talked about making earlier when I didn't make it earlier. So thin at the top, thick at the bottom, giving him a nice angle, sort of a bend where his elbow is going to be. And you can press in some little lines. As you can see, I can't do a straight line. The bit around his sleeve is supposed to be kind of slightly straighter than what I've drawn it. Okay, we're going to go for some darker blue now for the legs. Inserting them just underneath, you know, where I pushed those kind of holes or dips earlier. And cut them down to size. And then we're going to roll a ball of black modeling paste for the feet. Let's cut it in half. And then we want the flat edge, so the edge that it was cut will go to be like the underneath part of the shoe. So the rounded bits at the top, a couple of little laces. I think they're laces on it. And again, let's just get a bit more shading in. I was considering doing texture all over his face. And I just was really undecided. I didn't know if it might be a bit too much. So instead, I thought we might paint the little individual hairlines on later. Oh, and in case you're wondering, I've used a variety of different brushes, but this is one of the Silvia Mancini ones. Again, I'll put links below to all these. Now I'm trying to paint like a tiny bit of brown near the bottom of the black of his eye, but it doesn't really show very well. I've actually used a mix of like white, squirrel brown, and then a bit of yellow on his face. And then we want the little like police emblem. Is it like kind of a cop shield? Is that what it is? It is, isn't it? One for his hat, one for his uniform at the front. Again, let's just put a little bit of squirrel brown just lightly on there, just so it doesn't look too flat in colour. And then we can add highlights as well with the white. Now, I've left quite a bit in this video for you guys, but if you let me know in the comments below, do you prefer having a lot of the work shown, or do you prefer it so that like I cut it down, have it all a little bit faster with a bit less of me talking? Let me know what you find most useful. And in fact, it'd be nice to know actually if you guys watch the videos and get a chance to have a go at making these for yourself, or whether you just watch them and never consider actually having a go at making them. I watch a lot of videos that I never make after I've watched them. Another brush, this one's the Yellow Bee Cake Company ones. They're another lot of nice brushes. There's some really nice brushes available out there, guys. Okay, so there's those hairlines. I've just mixed the powder like really diluted so it's not too strong, and just put a few lines on. Okay, so I've added all the details now to the car. I realized I didn't show you everything in the video. But there he is. Let's put Dog Man in place next to the cake. I've just put it on a whiteboard as well. There he is. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this one. And of course, if you want more in-depth tutorials, you can always find my online classes over on my website, the masterclasses. And thank you to everybody that's been purchasing my book that is still available over on my website and over on Amazon. Thanks for watching, guys.